If you ever saw a wooden surfboard, it was probably hanging in somebody's house or underneath the deck. But kind of in the last 10 or 15 years, wood has made a big comeback. They surf wonderfully. It's beautiful and it feels great to be on one of them. I always had a love for wood and kind of passionate about things that went in the water. I've kind of been around wooden boats most of my life. There's just so much character. The way they're built, the stories that come with them, a lot of that has translated over to why we build surfboards the way we do. When we first started thinking about building surfboards, wood was the natural material we chose. They have a very high strength to weight ratio. Wooden surfboards have the longest history of use in the surf world than any other material. People have been surfing wooden surfboards since kind of the first documented history of people riding waves. The board starts in CAD, where we take a 3D model, break down the shape, and kind of create frames and templates and all the inner parts of the board that we get cut on a CNC machine. We take those frames and we just pop them out, assemble the frame into kind of a skeleton. We go out to our lumber shed, pick a bunch of cedar, and bring them into our mill shop, put glue along the edges, clamp it all together into a panel. Everything's book matched, you have symmetry in the colors and texture of the wood. Cut your outline. Take our assembled frame, gently put it down right on top of the plank. Once that foundation is started, you're basically building up the three-dimensional shape, the outside part of the board, using lots of strips that kind of interlock and fit together. Every piece of wood is going to be different, and it's all going to react differently. There are frustrations with it, but I think that's one of the things that keeps it challenging. You learn to read the kind of what the grain lines are doing and what the color of the wood is telling you. Once those rails are cleaned up, put our top planks on. It's a little bit like putting a lid on a box. It's like, this is it. Whatever's inside that board is staying inside that board. And by tensioning some rope, you can clamp the two together. It's like a time capsule. What makes our boards unique are they are built right here in York. They're built using material that grows right here in the state of Maine. They're built 100% by hand by local craftspeople and surfers. There's a lot of time that goes into these boards, between 40 and 60 hours start to finish. We wanted to build surfboards that were as hollow as they could be, but still be strong enough to work well. Too light and they don't surf well, but too heavy and they don't surf well. So there's a balance point there, and that's where we try to be. Taking the board off the rocker table once the top has gone on, that is by far one of my top favorite parts. It's just you and a shaping stand, a board, and a hand plane. Everything else is out of your view. It's simple, it's pleasurable, it's quiet. You can be with your thoughts and you can just kind of be present. There's something about taking a nice sharp edge tool to a beautiful piece of wood and feeling the curls coming off and knowing that every pass that you're making, you're kind of getting it closer and closer to what you have in mind. Once we've shaped it down and the board's looking like it's supposed to look like, it's time for it to go into the glassing room. 4-ounce fiberglass, laying it over the board, draping it over the edges, cutting it, applying epoxy, and on the board. Once both sides are lamb coated, it's time to put in the hardware. Drill and router and install the fin box. And on the other side, we drill and put in the leash plug and a vent. There's a lot of air just naturally inside the board, and that air wants to expand and contract with temperature changes. And that vent has a little piece of Gore-Tex fabric in it, and it allows air to kind of breathe both ways, but it doesn't allow water to get in. Once all that hardware is put in, it goes back into the glassing room. We brush a nice, beautiful, thick coat of epoxy over the whole surface, and that we call a gloss coat. That's supposed to look beautiful and glossy and shiny and flawless. You get to see that board come to life. Whatever the colors in the wood, they really come out. It just makes it look like candy. You just want to touch it and run your hands down it, and it's just kind of the icing on the cake. Once everything is hard, we put it into what we call the oven, get that epoxy to cure, really kind of bake it, and just get it to harden. Put in the fin, screw in the vent, and ship it out. We just love the idea of building something that's sustainable and long-lasting and made by hand. Kind of gives you a deeper connection to the product over something you might buy on a shelf. When a customer gets the board, they feel it. They 100% feel the amount of work and the amount of passion that went into the board. So I'm not really looking at hours and efficiency. We're looking at like doing it right and enjoying it as we go.
Ma Baoli, better known as Gang La, is one of the 4 Grand Marshals leading New York's Pride Parade this year. But in the country he comes from, being gay is still a social taboo. The CEO of a Beijing-based internet company is on a mission to improve the lives of millions of gay men in China.
对于每一个 LGBT 人群来说，即使这个国家不允许你跟同性爱人结婚，但是你仍然要勇敢地去选择你自己的生活，你仍然应该拥有幸福生活的权利。
Ma's company Blue City runs an app and a website specifically for gay men. Blued is one of the biggest gay social networking apps in the world, with an estimated 30 million registered users. Unlike most other apps, Blued is more than just dating or hookups.
大家可以在我们这个软件里面找他自己的情感，然后可以阅读相关的内容，然后可以进行一些娱乐，比如玩游戏啊，比如看直播啊等等。
Back in 2000, when Ma studied at a police school in northern China, he realized he didn't feel like everyone else.
因为他们都找女朋友，然后谈恋爱，但是我对长得好看的同性的男生，我反而觉得对我更有吸引力。所以那个时候我就到互联网上去找这样的一些资料，然后希望能够告诉我自己我到底是谁。互联网上所有的信息都是负面的，都是错的，就是说同性恋要电击疗法，要被治疗，然后要吃药等等。
After visiting some foreign websites with different attitudes to homosexuality, Ma created his own site for a Chinese audience, encouraging people that
他们也是正常的，他们不用自卑，然后也不用自杀。
even though attitudes towards homosexuals are slowly changing in China, it's still a social stigma. The virtual world of Blued, where members can be open about their sexuality, is for most a striking contrast to their real lives. This is live streaming, a function added to Blued in late 2015, right as the internet craze was starting to take off in China. Many self-made stars like Jin make decent amounts of money by receiving audiences' virtual currencies and gifts.
我们不是彼此的初恋，初恋这种事儿多不靠谱啊。
For Kyle and Klaus, a couple who have come out, live streaming on Blued means something different.
其实我经常会收到很多粉丝的一些互动的留言，就是类似就是说你们让我们看到了同志情侣之间的一些希望啊，我看到这样的留言我是很欣慰的。
The government's rules for acceptable content online may shift quickly in China, with LGBT material in a grey area. Many companies feel the chill of the recent internet crackdown, but Blue City still runs as usual. Ma has won the Chinese government's trust by helping with HIV prevention among gay men. A third of the company's staff are dedicated to screening pornographic and politically sensitive content.
我不太多的愿意去对抗，我更多的愿意去对话，去改变他们的想法。我觉得这个可能在中国来说是更有效的。
In the past 5 years, Blue City has grown from a team of 7 people to a promising business with about 250 staff. Ma said the company earned over $15 million last year, mainly through advertising and selling virtual currencies to live streaming audiences. Now the company is expanding overseas.
我希望吧，通过我们的努力，布鲁蒂能够成为全球第一家在美国纳斯达克或者是纽交所上市的这样的同志互联网公司。
This is Rich Chiga. He's a Chinese rapper by way of Indonesia, and he's very popular on the internet. This is Joji. He's a Japanese-Australian singer, and he's also very popular on the internet. Plus, Joji invented the Harlem Shake meme. Let me say that again. This guy, Joji, in the blood bathtub, invented the Harlem Shake meme. But we'll come back to that. So Rich and Joji are both signed to 88 Rising, an entertainment company hoping to build a lasting global brand that will outlive singular moments of virality. They primarily create content combining Asian culture and hip-hop, a formula that apparently pleases the internet gods greatly. They've only been around for 18 months, but they're already putting up major label numbers.
I think that we have an unprecedented collective of talent, a group of predominantly Asian artists, really making waves globally, which from an independent point of view as well.
88's founder, Sean Miyashiro, cut his teeth launching Vice's electronic music channel, Thump. But quickly, Sean became interested in life beyond dance music.
I knew that after launching a whole content platform that I have kind of the ability and the know-how to do it again, but for what was the question.
So Sean moved to the Bronx to start over and figure it out. He couldn't afford an office space, so he worked out of his car at the top of a grimy parking garage.
Everything kind of started here. If you look around, this is my environment. This is my serenity, really. 88 Rising was built here. Built on the grounds of LA Fitness residence in a parking garage. I was living in the Bronx. I'm just damn, where the hell do I go? So I just come up here and I just kind of figure things out every single day. Being okay, what the hell is this thing? Coming here was kind of my own kind of private office, basically. To be honest, I would even go to the bathroom here. I would take pisses here, you know what I mean? It was, it's just too far to go back down there. When I need Wi-Fi, I'd spend a good part of the day at Dunkin' Donuts. Hi, how are you? Can I get a chicken snack wrap?
Before 88 Rising officially launched, Sean caught a surprise break in the form of a Twitter friendship with a funny 16-year-old kid from Indonesia named Brian, who taught himself English by watching Rubik's Cube tutorial videos on YouTube. Seriously, that's true.
I thought his Twitter was genius, from the future, just crazy, and just the shit that he was saying, the memes he was making. But I didn't know that he rapped or anything like that. I really didn't, and he came up with that stick 2 weeks later.
12 in the morning, pop shells for a living and baby gon' smell blood trail every minute road.
Dat Stick was Brian's first ever attempt at making a rap song, and it immediately went viral.
Everything was great about it, but the one thing that I noticed is the song was hard as hell. Just everything about it, man. Just it was menacing, bro.
Soon after the video dropped, Brian signed with 88 Rising.
I'll FaceTime with Rich. Sorry for calling you Rich Chiga on my phone, Rich. Brian, he gets super pissed off that he's saved in my phone as Rich Chiga. He's like, dude, am I not a human to you? What's good, bro?
What's good, brother?
How you doing?
Doing great. I just did a sound check.
How was it?
It was tight.
So, Brian could definitely rap, but some viewers understandably took offense at a Chinese kid satirizing rap cliches and calling himself Rich Chiga. But if a group of well-known rappers saw the video and genuinely liked it, that could at least help validate Brian as a legit hip-hop artist. Plus, it could be really funny.
It was just kind of an idea that I just had on the spot. Everything that rappers say is better and funnier and smarter and wittier. It's just more entertaining. We just edit it as tight as possible, put it up, and it really worked.
12 in the morning, pop shells for the living in.
Yo, this nigga got a pouch on and a Reebok pouch. This is the hardest nigga of all time.
You said when you come for a chigga like me, that was dope.
It's just lit, and I think people will take it as a joke at first, but it's like if he ran with that and kept doing more videos like that, it's just lit.
You know, I'd never been to America before, and like all of a sudden, just like I see like all the rappers that I listen to just like reacting to my stuff, and I was like, what? How did this happen?
The reaction video also went viral, and even led to a remix of Dat Stick featuring Wu-Tang's Ghostface.
I'll get on that track. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Really, on the remix?
Yeah. Oh, you know him?
And yeah, the remix went viral too. Brian has since acknowledged the misstep in his name and claims he may change it. But for the time being, he's still Rich Chigga to his fans. An ever-growing global audience, hungry for more releases from emerging talent around the world.
I didn't know that it was gonna be this impactful and this important to people, and I'm very thankful and blessed that it has. And every day now that I wake up, it's like it's just like a new mission every day.
A major part of that mission involves Joji. Remember the bloody bath guy? He's a former YouTube personality in the middle of a career transition.
The sound of this song, Will He, it's like a trap song that you can like slow dance to. Awkward prom shit, you know what I mean? I used to do crazy episodic internet videos. It was going well, and one day it was me and a few friends just in a room. We were casually chilling, and then someone plays the song, and it's brand new at the time. I happened to have a lot of costumes laying around, so I told the other guys, I was like, get in these costumes and let's just dance to it, like who cares? We were like, okay, let's just go crazy at the drop. So that video goes up, I go to sleep, and the next morning, everyone's doing it, like next morning. That taught me a lot about the internet, how people want to just be a part of something. And from that point on, something changed, and I was a little better at understanding demographics and people and what they want to see and what they want to hear. I was friends with a couple other artists who were affiliated with 88, and then I also started to realize that 88 is the bridge between Western and Asian entertainment, and I really wanted to be a part of that.
Joji just released the In Tongues EP, his first project as a serious artist.
Joji's In Tongues record came out a couple weeks ago. It's #2 on Billboard on the R&B charts, which is crazy for an independent release, and he's like a brand new artist.
And the success is even more impressive, knowing he went from creating something like this,
It's just Taco Bell. What could possibly go wrong?
to creating something Tonight, Rich Chigga has a show in New York City. Tickets sold out in an hour.
I came here, I'm first online. I was here at 1.
I was the third person online.
So why'd you get here so early?
Because I want to see Rich Chigga.
I want to touch him.
What do you guys think of Joji?
He's That's my dad, son.
You guys cop the new EP or like?
Yeah. I woke up at 6 in the morning just to cop that shit. And then I listened to it, and that shit started making me cry.
This is actually kind of exciting. Every time, this never gets old. Like, you live online and social media, but like, there's nothing like just being with the people.
More often than not, viral success happens by accident. And then after an appearance on Ellen or Jimmy Kimmel, the creator's star power fizzles out. But Idiot Rising has figured out how to turn potential gimmicks into brands with an actual following that keeps coming back for the next thing.
Oh, shit!
So keep an eye out for Idiot's next move. But more than likely, it won't be covered on network television or terrestrial radio. Although, as they've already proven, nowadays that really doesn't matter.
Online retailer Farfetch is betting it can shape the future. This is its concept store, showcasing the latest in retail tech.
How do you capture all of that fantastic information that you gather in store with customers, touch and feel products? And we created a concept called the connected rail. And this is using a combination of RFID and ultrasound. The RFID signal recognizes the product, and the ultrasound recognizes the movement. Take the product off, and then you'll start to see your products appear. And essentially, it's like online browsing behavior. Whichever products you touch and pick up in the store are automatically sent to your app. This is effectively what you've created is your in-store wish list. In the middle, you'll see essentially a hologram of the product. What the customer sees, they control the experience on a touch device. What this allows the customer to do is take elements of products and then add their own style to it. Right, so this is the connected mirror. So in this example, I see my products. I select a coat, and that's tried it, and it's slightly too big for me. So what I can do is choose an alternative size and send a request to the sales associate, and they'll bring that size to me in the fitting room mirror. You'll also see that we've got some product recommendations here. Crucially, the sales associate's able to push items into the mirror from their device. If you wanted to, you could simply use the mirror and pay and go. Your items would then be packed and dispatched to you afterwards.
Do you want me to turn you so you're looking outwards? Yes, please. How about there? First time we came out with B, Jade said, it feels like I've been released from prison. Do you want these, Mrs.?
Definitely.
Definitely. Right. Yeah. And she could say hello to everybody, people she hadn't seen for months.
It's
Hi, it's
Jade.
Jade.
Oh. So you can talk to Jade through this.
Hi, Katie. She's there.
Hi.
Every time anyone's seen her, they want to know why she's there. And it's kind of the opposite of when you're in a wheelchair and people see you and they kind of go, oh, should I look? I don't know what the right protocol is. When there's a tiny robot with its bright little eyes going around just looking happy everywhere, it really opens you up for conversation.
You've got some friends here, look.
Hiya. When I saw her for the first time, I remember thinking, this is going to change things. This is one of those points where if this was a book, this would be the cliffhanger. have a condition called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which means that I have a lot of dislocations, there's a lot of pain, and a lot of seizures and whatnot. So I can end up on my own in my room for long periods of time. A lot of the time, with a condition like my own, of course there's the pain, and the pain is bad, and the dislocations are bad, and the seizures and being in paralysis and never knowing whether you're going to be able to wake up properly tomorrow, that's bad. But what's worse still is being able to count the number of people you see a day on one hand.
Are you ready?
Sure am, I'm just hoping the connection's going to stay.
Yeah, me too. Alright, here we go.
When you're used to just the same little metre by metre and a half window every day, and you've been there for months, being able to just see the sky from somewhere else, or the tops of trees, or a sign, is incredible. Or being able to have that kind of chat in the car that most people will probably take for granted.
I'm going to go past Grandma and Grandad so you can give them a wave. Now, if Jade is particularly seizure-y, she can still take part. And that's brilliant, really, because before she would just be left in a bed or in the house with just her carers. It's quite a small world, that.
Right, so there's one of them. Here, this costume I'm busy making at the moment. When I'm not on bed rest and I'm not just wearing pyjamas all the time, I enjoy being able to dress as different characters and go to Comic Cons and that kind of thing, because it just lets me show a different side of myself, and it's a bit of fun. If you can't go out that often, you've got to enjoy it when you do. Was that? That's good. It's one of those weird things where I want to not have to use B because I want to be well enough to be able to go to those places myself. Like, it really makes a big difference to me to be able to go into school. But the thing is, with my condition fluctuating all of the time, I can't go into school reliably. Today's the first day that I've been in school via B, and so far it's interesting. Still a few little things that we need to work out, but for the most part I think it's going fairly well. And it's brilliant because I can really tell the difference between today and yesterday. How yesterday I forced myself to go into school when I wasn't very well, and I was really tired afterwards and ended up having loads of seizures. Whereas today I've been able to do all of the work, I've been able to keep a clear head and not be ill, which means I'm able to be more focused on my schoolwork.
So there is my first step of working, is to simplify root 8. The algebra test is next week.
Now I'm trying to make friendships which I'll be able to maintain with B. Before that, I end up letting people down quite often. B gives me hope, yeah. She's just always there. And if I can't do something, she can. And if I need sort of assistance to be able to make commitments, then she's there, and she means that I feel like a more valuable person because I'm more reliable.
it debuted, the 4G wireless we have today allowed people for the first time to hit the road and explore unknown places with only a smartphone for directions. When 5G arrives, it could enable driverless cars to take us there as well. 5G stands for 5th generation mobile networks or wireless systems. It's insanely fast and can accommodate a lot more connected devices. But the reason it's being called revolutionary is because 5G will allow connected devices to speak to each other as well as people.
Right now we're living in a world where really it's a one-way experience.
That's Bloomberg tech reporter Ian King.
The network talks to your phone, you look at your phone and access data, then you send something back to the network. What we're being told about 5G is that really for the first time we're going to see machines communicating with each other over mobile networks in a meaningful way.
5G could end up being 100 times faster than what we have now, with speeds that could reach 20 gigabits per second. In plain English, that means downloading a full-length HD movie in seconds. 5G will also increase total bandwidth, which we will need in order to accommodate the growing Internet of Things. We're talking about the class of devices like internet-connected refrigerators, thermostats, dog collars, but 5G will enable many, many more.
Things like your utility network, factories, where machines are just sat there not connected at all. Suddenly they're all going to be connected. Suddenly we're going to be able to have real-time monitoring. Other things like cars, like utility poles, like your light, the light poles.
But perhaps the biggest advance will be a huge reduction in communication lag time, known as latency. A network of driverless cars will need the speed of 5G to ping each other multiple times per second to avoid collisions. Near instantaneous data transfers could allow doctors to perform surgery remotely with a robotic scalpel. So how will all this work? First, you need to improve network density.
And that's just a fancy word for saying you put more towers out there. What we're being told is that's not actually the case with 5G.
The idea is 5G will not only use the existing mobile spectrum, but also tap into higher frequencies called millimeter waves. Millimeter waves can carry more data, but only travel short distances. This may mean you'll see a lot more of these base stations around town. And the new towers may have as many as 100 antenna ports, compared to about a dozen on 4G cell towers. So when will we get 5G? Getting 5G ready is expected to cost providers $275 billion over 7 years in the US alone. Look for the first 5G service to pop up in big cities sometime in 2019.
The cubicle represents a tyranny, that it confines your imagination, your thoughts, into a small physical area. Imagine pretty much every software engineer or finance person being able to, disconnect from their desk and look at holographic monitors on a beach and doing their work from there. That's not going to be science fiction. It's the modern office place.
Silicon Valley is all about building the future. A startup called Meta thinks it's getting there first, thanks to a big bet that it's made on augmented reality.
How are you?
Good, thank you. Welcome to Meta.
Thank you.
Call it a 360-degree office where you can spatialize your thoughts as part of your workflow for education, architecture, design, engineering, etc.
People often mix up augmented reality with virtual reality. VR totally blocks your ability to see or hear the real world. AR overlays holograms onto what you already see. Meta has tried to make its version of the workspace feel familiar.
You grab the hologram instead of using a controller or a mouse, and your brain already knows how to do it. In other words, we've designed an operating system that humanity has always known how to use. So you can see this eyeball, which is, by the way, photorealistic. You can see my hand is occluding the eyeball, and now the eyeball is occluding my hand, right? You see those two circles? They get small, and then they turn into this glowing white ball, and then I can move my hand around supernaturally. I can do this with two hands and rotate the thing. I can stretch it. I can throw it back right into the shelving system, and that's all you have to learn to become a modern worker.
And to prove this, the employees at Meta have started to get rid of their computer monitors, trading them in for Meta's augmented reality headsets. Mayron thinks that in less than a decade, we'll all be just wearing strips of glass that
early 80s, everybody had computers on their desktop, but no one was using them because they had a lot of work to do. So they were still using typewriters. And at some point, the CEO took all the typewriters away and everybody was forced to use their computers. So it's very exciting to see a new generation of technology, a new paradigm.
I consider us like pioneers in the holographic wild. I'm pulling up my browser with my hands and sending out emails to colleagues and just kind of really acclimating to the new environment.
Now you're putting on my computer, essentially. Our digital lives live on our phones. We have all of our pictures and notes and all these kinds of things. So, and why don't you write yourself a little sticky note? I like it. And go ahead and just take your fist right over the top of the sticky note and close your fist. And now.
Oh, what? Meta's own transition to augmented reality has run into plenty of unexpected problems. And it's still going to be a while before you'll start to see these devices in your office. But I think it's a future worth waiting for.
If we could see these holograms between us, we will have been able to share our work with one another more naturally, more efficiently, and more productively than ever before. Humanity will have evolved slightly.
This is Hatsune Miku, Japan's sensational virtual pop star. She's released over 100,000 songs in multiple languages and performed sold-out concerts around the world. Her image has appeared in games, on TV, in car races, and is even etched on the side of a Japanese space rocket.
I came for Hatsune Miku, Carlos.
She's Lady Gaga's favorite digital pop star and opened shows for her in the US 3 years ago. Tens of thousands of fans attended her exhibition and live shows near Tokyo recently.
理想のアイドルっていうとどの曲でもミクはすごい綺麗に歌ってくれる。
他没有缺点啊，没有任何让我们感到不開心的一些新聞。
She's everything to everybody. That's probably why she's so popular.
Miku's creator Hiroyuki Ito and his Sapporo-based company have been developing the virtual diva for over 10 years.
初音ミクとはキャラクターとしてすごくYouTube とかで検索するとたくさんの初音ミクが出てくるんですけども、元々の初音ミクのその原点は歌声を合成するソフトウェアなんです。
Both the software and character are named Hatsune Miku, meaning the first sound of the future. Originally based on Yamaha's Vocaloid technology, Miku the software has a sound bank containing voice samples and a huge array of tools. You input the melody and lyrics, then Miku the character sings them. To date, Krypton has sold 120,000 software licenses at $200 each to fans around the world who use it to create numerous songs and share them online. Some of the fan-created songs are chosen to be part of Miku's concerts, for which they're paid a royalty fee.
もともと初音ミクっていうその存在自体がそのボトムアップって言いますか、中にはアマチュアクリエイターじゃなくて今もうすでにプロになって活躍している方もいらっしゃるんですけども。
The company also has other revenue streams. It makes money from merchandising, licensing deals, and concert ticket sales. According to the real-life musicians who perform with Hatsune Miku, the virtual pop star is interesting and surprising.
今年で3年ぐらい、ちょうど3年ぐらいやってきて、ライブも数十本、数百本だったので、そういうことが演奏によって起こせるためのそういう器みたいな感じになってきて、初音ミクらしさって僕はあんまりない。初音ミクって何だってあり。
For Ito, Miku has the potential to change the way we think about music.
そういう新しいそのテクノロジーによって新しい音楽のあり方っていうものを模索していきたいと思っていました。
And for her fans, it goes even further.
ミクって魂がないので、だからみんな魂を作り上げるために存在する。
Now, there are a lot of fitness gadgets out there. In my quest to get fit, I tested 17 of them over the last few months. At least one personal trainer I know was a little bit skeptical.
Yeah, I've been watching these new technologies come to the market for almost as long as I've been a personal trainer. They're just tricks and tropes. They're not much different than the Bowflex machines or, to be honest, the original Jane Fonda workout video.
But some of these gadgets that are just coming to the market do so much more than what they used to do, just tracking your activities. Out of all of them, this chest strap was my favorite. It comes with a robot coach that points to the future, one where you might not need a human trainer at all. And it works like this. You wear the chest strap so that it can read your heart rate, and that connects to Move's free app that talks to you.
Welcome to Move Heart Rate Hit Outdoor Running. Let's get moving and warm up in Zone 2.
Move's computerized coach tells you what to do at that exact moment, whether you're running outside or you're doing body weight exercises indoors.
Swing your arms faster to get your legs moving quicker. Let's crush this round.
And by reading your heart rate, she knows exactly how hard you're working. She keeps you honest.
Way to go, you are in the target zone. Keep pushing, you're almost at the end of the round. Don't give up.
I've been running for 7 years now, and my biggest problem is that I never push myself hard enough. I end up going on the same slow, comfortable 30-minute jog, but the Move HR Burn blasted me out of that rut. By the end of these half-hour exercises, I was drenched in sweat in a way that I never am when I work out alone. Training with a real person is great, whether that's your group instructor or your coach or your personal trainer, but humans, they're expensive. For the rest of us, this $60 gadget is all you need.
what does it take to change the world? A big army? A cure to a pandemic? A revolution? All of these take either a lot of people, thousands of hours, or massive amounts of space. But for Julian Assange, all he needs is one room, an internet connection, and the world will listen. Assange is located here, and more specifically, right here. And from that location, he's posted government secrets, classified documents, and leaked emails from some of the world's most powerful people. And in doing so, has been labeled a hero, a villain, a nihilist, and everything in between. This is how an Australian programmer sequestered in the Ecuadorian embassy in London became one of the most influential and notorious people in the world. Born in 1971 in Townsville, Australia, Assange has always been on the move. Living in over 30 homes by the time he was in his mid-teens, Assange, along with his mother and half-brother, finally settled down in Melbourne. His introduction to hacking started at 16 when he was given a Commodore 64, which he attached to a modem. He attended the University of Melbourne, where he studied programming, physics, and mathematics. He never graduated, but that doesn't mean he didn't get an education. By 1991, Assange hacked into the Pentagon, U.S. Navy, and other branches of the U.S. government. In 1996, he was caught by the Australian Federal Police and charged with over 30 counts of hacking and computer-related crimes. He didn't get any jail time, but he was fined $2,100.
I think the first taste of what would come later was the hacking that he did as a young programmer, and that really sort of foreshadowed a healthy skepticism of the use and abuse of technology by governments.
That's Vernon Silver.
I'm a reporter for Bloomberg's investigations team.
Assange's youth as a hacker laid the foundation for him to start WikiLeaks in 2006. But what is WikiLeaks? It's a website that posts unfiltered, usually classified documents. What separates it from every other media outlet is that they have no editorial hierarchy. With a publication like the New York Times, information comes in, they take that information, package it, then disseminate it for the public to see. WikiLeaks, however, cuts out the middleman.
WikiLeaks gathers information, most of it given to them anonymously. So what they're doing is really very simple. They get the information in one end from who gives it to them and out the other with sometimes minimal interference. Julian Assange is the leader of that, the mastermind, the creator, and really, because he thinks of it as a journalistic enterprise, the editor-in-chief.
But every story starts with a source, and Assange has some unconventional sources.
Julian Assange does not hack as far as we know. He is the recipient of people who are either insiders who give him secret documents or hacked emails from a foreign power.
That's Eli Lake.
I am a columnist for Bloomberg.
And there was no source bigger for Assange than Chelsea Manning. He used to be known as U.S. soldier Bradley Manning. In 2010, Manning provided Assange and WikiLeaks with hundreds of thousands of leaked government documents. WikiLeaks quietly began releasing the documents in February of 2010, then made big headlines in April by posting what is now known as the Collateral Murder Video.
Come on, fire!
It was a vivid, graphic video. It changed the debate on the Iraq War, and importantly, it put WikiLeaks on the map when they put it online, and they couldn't be ignored at that point.
And those leaks were just the beginning. They went on to post more than 90,000 leaked documents known as the Afghan War Logs, 390,000 documents known as the Iraq War Logs, and 250,000 private messages between diplomats called cables in what is now known as Cablegate. These leaks were met with very real ethical questions.
The problem with publishing those cables was that a number of confidential sources for U.S. diplomats who faced real danger when their names were exposed.
Then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton drove the point home that
every country, including the United States, must be able to have candid conversations about the people and nations with whom they deal.
Shortly after Cablegate, the Swedish government issued an arrest warrant for Assange on allegations of rape and molestation. He claimed the allegations were fabricated to get him extradited to the United States, a claim the U.S. government denied. Either way, Assange's next move was
to seek refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy, which really was the beginning of the new chapter in his life and what we're dealing with now, which is him being stuck in London.
What was supposed to be an office in an embassy is now Assange's self-imposed prison to this very day. But that doesn't mean he's slowed down. Since being trapped in the embassy, WikiLeaks has released files about Guantanamo Bay prisoners, Syrian political figures, and the draft to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And then came the 2016 U.S. election.
Thousands of leaked emails showed Democratic Party officials possibly plotting against Bernie Sanders in his race against Hillary Clinton.
Over the course of 68 days, WikiLeaks released 20,000 confidential Democratic National Committee emails. In terms of the presidential race, if you look right here, when Assange released the first batch of emails, Trump actually takes his first lead against Clinton.
I think we've had enough of the Clintons, in all fairness. Don't you think?
Once WikiLeaks started exposing secrets of the Democratic Party, Julian Assange became a hero to many on the right. Public opinion kind of flip-flopped.
WikiLeaks.
From the emails, we now know Hillary Clinton's campaign manager makes risotto, and also how the DNC squashed Bernie Sanders' campaign. One thing we don't know is who gave Assange the stolen emails in the first place.
Many leading Democrats say they suspect it was the Russians. They released an analysis from a private cybersecurity firm that had said it was the Russians.
But Assange claims
our source is not the Russian government, and it is not a state party.
So this is where we stand today. The public still doesn't know who provided the emails to WikiLeaks. Meanwhile, Assange is still running WikiLeaks and still releasing documents. In March 2017, he started publishing documents from the CIA's Center for Cyber Intelligence called Vault 7.
The CIA, the agency charged with finding and keeping our top secrets, can't keep its own secrets.
As long as Assange has a connection to the world, no government secret will be too far from exposure.
Julian Assange is still in the embassy. Maybe he'll leave, maybe he won't. Kind of regardless, his work has been done. He's changed the way people think about their governments, about their own secrets, about their own hackability, and really the world has changed because of him.
Expose everything you won't admit. And action. This entire video is based on a true story. When I do like motivational speeches or even tell myself like love yourself and you should love yourself.
This is Lily Singh.
But to fans all over the world, she's the YouTube star Superwoman.
What up, everyone? It's your girl, Superwoman. I know we can change the world for the better, one positive day at a time.
My parents now know what I do. They didn't know what I did for a long time in the beginning of my career. I was just making videos in my room. They had no idea.
Mom, Dad, have you seen my keys? I can't find them anywhere. Because you're always on phone.
Until someone called them, like a family member from another part of Canada, was like, Canada, is your daughter making videos? And I think my mom was like, I don't know, Lily, are you making videos?
Just making videos grew into an entire career. Today, Lily's YouTube channel has some 12 million subscribers, over 2 billion views, and guest stars like Michelle Obama, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, and Seth Rogen.
I think a lot of young girls are raised to believe that you're going to go to school and then graduate and then get married and then get a job and then have kids.
And Lily was on that path, all the way through a psychology degree at York University in Toronto. But when she started thinking about a career,
I started to immensely panic and think something was wrong with me because I tried to figure out my life and it wasn't working in that straight line.
It was 2010, and YouTube was only 5 years old.
I thought nothing of YouTube. I was probably the last person in my circle of friends to discover YouTube. And I remember when I did, I thought, this is so strange. There's people making videos in their rooms, and other people are watching them.
So she figured, why not give it a shot?
I one day posted a video because I was sad, and I wanted to be creative and happy.
She didn't know how to edit video or write scripts, so she winged it.
It was so bad and so cringe, and my expectation was literally nothing. I was like, I'm gonna put this video up, a couple of my friends are gonna watch it, probably make fun of me, and that's gonna be the end of this. The second and third video came from, wait, 70 people watched my first one, can I get 80 to watch the next one?
She kept creating, she kept posting, and the viewers kept coming. Lily had found an audience.
A lot of the comments were, oh my God, there's a brown girl on YouTube.
More specifically, Indian. Lily's parents immigrated to Canada from India, and Lily was born and raised in Scarborough, near Toronto.
My home life was awesome. My parents, even though I portrayed them to be quite strict in my videos.
Oh, Lily, wear the rest of your skirt, huh? I teach you like this, to walk around like this, showing everything to everyone?
They actually aren't like that at all. They're pretty modern and pretty cool.
Your dress is short. Don't know what for.
And were pretty lenient with me. I mean, I got away with a lot of things. I was a brat. I was a brat.
She had a different idea of what she wanted out of life than other kids. In a grade school graduation slideshow, her classmates said they wanted to be lawyers and doctors.
And then I came up and I was like, rapper.
Making out with your friends, man. But then you say that you hate hoes.
I could just feel my parents being like, why?
Because that's just not something women really did in the Singh family.
I know there was a ton of people that weren't happy about my birth being a female, so I think, and that's some real-ish, but it's a real thing. The best thing I could have done to prove to so many people that didn't want my mom to have a daughter was to become Superwoman.
What up, everyone? It's your girl, Superwoman.
It was the name of Lily's favorite hip-hop song by Lil Mo featuring Fabulous.
I love the song so much because it was one of the only songs at the time that was an empowering female song, where Lil Mo's going on about, like, I will save guys with my superpowers, and I will save girls with my superpowers, and I am the Superwoman. I thought, this name that I've had for so long that empowered me when I was younger, I'm gonna make this my screen name. Maybe there should be a new series.
Superwoman didn't just burst onto the scene overnight with a viral video. It was a steady climb fueled by hard work.
The moment that I thought this is going somewhere and this could be a career was the first time I performed internationally. It was in India. And it was the first time where I was truly across the world and people knew my videos.
Singh has transformed herself from a bratty kid to an internet personality to a media mogul. She starred in a feature film, A Trip to Unicorn Island, in 2016. And her book, How to Be a Boss, hit the New York Times bestseller list in 2017 while she was on a 30-city international tour. Lily started out with the goal of getting millions of subscribers and financial security.
Hurry the hell up.
But after surpassing those goals, success has new meaning.
I've really come to terms with the fact that my definition of success is what's the best legacy I can leave behind. And it's not the number of views and the number of subscribers. It is the number of people that can say, this girl changed my life or changed something in my life positively.
CTE is often found in the brains of deceased athletes, military veterans, and others with a history of repetitive brain trauma. Hundreds have donated their brains to the VA Boston University Concussion Legacy Foundation Brain Bank.
This is a former NFL player who died in his early 70s, and this is a veteran who also died in his early 70s.
Dr. Ann McKee dissects these brains.
The hippocampus and the mammillary bodies are very important for memory. I can see that they're slightly affected.
McKee recently dissected the brain of former New England Patriots player Aaron Hernandez, who was convicted of murder and later committed suicide.
You'll see right away that the brain is showing signs of shrinkage. You can see the crevices in the brain that you can't see in the normal.
McKee says Hernandez's severe case of CTE impacted his decision-making, depression, and ability to control rage and aggression. Right now, she thinks we're underestimating how many people have CTE.
We were able to distinguish between CTE and controls and CTE and Alzheimer's disease. The next question is, can we do this in the blood, and can we do this in living people? And we aren't there yet with those answers.
But the need for a diagnosis in the living is motivating companies such as Quanterix in Lexington, Massachusetts, to work faster on technology that could diagnose concussions and CTE in as few as 30 minutes. Kevin Rosovsky is the CEO.
It's like a high-powered microscope. And so by doing that, we can see little biomarkers that you couldn't see before in the blood.
Quanterix received a grant from the NFL and just went public. Since then, its stock is up more than 40%. The company sells a machine called Simoa for $175,000 to other biotechs, hospitals, and researchers.
And for the first time in history, we're able to see brain health in blood, and that's a major breakthrough, and that's leading to less invasive testing, and we've already been able to see evidence of concussions, and there's the beginning evidence of being able to see the accumulated effect of concussions.
Quanterix is also trying to detect Alzheimer's disease, multiple sclerosis, and ALS. Rosovsky says he thinks diagnosing concussions will be easier than diagnosing CTE.
Diagnosing CT in the living probably is a couple years away. We're real excited to see the progress, but reducing some of that work into actual tests in the laboratory takes time. There's regulatory approvals. There's a lot of red tape that you have to go through.
Also in this race to diagnose CTE in the blood are Athlon Medical and Exosome Sciences. And New York's Mount Sinai Hospital is scanning for the disease in the living. But it's just one step in a series of questions for those with serious head trauma. There's still no cure for CTE.
Even if we had a great idea for a treatment, there's no way to test whether it's effective or not. So that's the enormous advance that we'll get if we can develop a biomarker for this disease.
In Boston, Ann Mostu, Bloomberg News.
Wine is a $300 billion global industry where one person's opinion can make fortunes or break them. That's because of this man, Robert Parker, and his newsletter, The Wine Advocate. For 3 decades, he dominated as the world's most influential wine critic. Now Parker's protege is building an empire of his own. Antonio Galloni runs Venice.
Antonio, tell me, what are you trying to build at Venice?
Well, at Venice, we started with the idea in 2013 of building a world-class platform. We have a database of about 250,000 professionally written reviews. On Delectable, we have 7 million user reviews. Through Delectable, we also have a partnership with Whole Foods and several other partnerships that we can't announce just yet. And when you put that all together, what we have is something that no other company in our space can even come close to.
Do you think of yourself as the next Parker?
Not at all.
Why?
Because Steve Jobs said you can't live your life trying to be somebody else. So he's one of my biggest influences, and I've never wanted to be a replica of somebody else because a replica is never as good as the original. Bob is a genius, fantastic, one of a kind. We're going to be something completely different, and I have no desire to be some version of somebody else.
Different in what way?
Every decision that I've made at this company is completely anathemic to what Bob did with his company. I want our writers to be partners. All of my senior people are locked into the company. They all have equity or they have a path to equity based on business results. That's something that we never had at Parker. Our benefits are world-class, and everything that we've done at Venice is completely different from that model. When Steve Tanzer, who is the most experienced active wine critic in America, wants to work with us, that says something. When Alessandro Masnaghetti, who's the best cartographer of vineyards, wants to work with us, that says something. When Neil Martin, who's a superstar wine critic with enormous experience in Bordeaux and Burgundy and the former lead critic at The Advocate, wants to come and be part of our team, that says something.
You make it sound like The Wine Advocate was a disaster as a company and a miserable experience as an employee.
No, it was great because I got to work with Bob Parker when he was at his prime. You know, and Bob was like a second father to me, and we talked on the phone all the time, and he gave me great advice.
Can anyone's palate dominate the wine criticism business the way Parker's did? And should anyone's palate dominate it the way his did?
I just think the world is very different today. You know, it's just a totally different world. It's probably not healthy to have a single person dominating the world.
It's not even wine criticism, it's the wine industry.
Yeah, that's probably not the healthiest thing in the world. But I think that there's just such an opportunity right now with social media and technology to reach such a massive number of people that I think it's possible that 1 or 2 people will actually have more influence than Bob Parker did, because they will, again, this goes back to your first question, not trying to be a version of somebody else. You see this in sports all the time. It's like, oh, well, nobody will ever beat this record. And then somebody comes along, you know, it's like tennis, Pete Sampras. Nobody's ever going to win as many Grand Slams. Now you have 2 guys who are ahead of that and 1 knocking on the door. And so I think a lot like that.
You're a former investment banker. How does that inform and influence what you're doing and what you've done?
My generation has had to deal with a lot more challenges. That's why I think we're actually much better poised for the future. My first job in finance, the first thing that happened was long-term capital, 1998. Then the tech bubble melted down. Then there was a mutual fund trading scandal. You know, that was all like within about 5 or 6 years. And these are the things that I had to deal with as a young executive. My peers who were 20 years older didn't know how to manage in crisis. They'd only seen Black Monday. They'd just been in a big bull market. It's very different. So I'm very lucky. People of my generation or a little bit younger have actually had to deal with a lot more crises. I think that's actually good for learning how to cope with challenges in business.
From the outside, it kind of looks like you're trying to demolish the house that Parker built, right? You left the Wine Advocate.
Yeah.
You merged with one of his chief rivals.
Yeah.
And you just hired his successor, Neil Martin.
Mm-hmm.
So are you?
I think what that says is that all the best people want to work at our company. And that's really what we strive to create starting in 2013. We wanted to create a world-class company that would attract the best-in-class talent, and not just on the content side, on the technology side, on the digital side, our office, and at every level, what we're trying to, we only hire superstars, and we're looking for those superstars. In the world of professional wrestling, there's something called a swerve.
Hulk Hogan has betrayed WCW.
Some examples. These tag team partners are called babyfaces, or the good guys. Then one of them swerves when he super kicks his tag team partner in the head, quickly assuming the role of the bad guy, or what the wrestling world calls the heel.
Are you kidding? What a despicable act that was!
Or a match is almost lost when, what's that? The superstar wrestler appears out of nowhere sprinting down the aisle to save the match.
That's the Warriors music! That's the Ultimate Warrior!
That's a swerve. So it should go as no surprise that World Wrestling Entertainment, known as the WWE, the most popular brand of sports entertainment in the world, is prepared for any swerves that come their way. So here's the story of how the WWE learned to see the swerve coming. So I spoke to Bloomberg reporters Felix Gillette.
I'm a writer for Bloomberg News for the global business team.
And Kim Basine.
And I'm the U.S. luxury reporter at Bloomberg.
To find out exactly how the WWE is positioning itself for an all-out global invasion, which starts with a massive change to their lucrative pay-per-view model.
WWE basically pioneered the pay-per-view model on cable. I remember as a kid, when the pay-per-view events came up, all of our friends would scramble around and try and get one of the parents to pay for it.
But in 2014, they took a huge risk.
They saw a little bit sooner than some of the other entertainment brands that where this whole thing was moving was away from cable and satellite television and towards on-demand streaming video apps. They made this risky decision, in essence, cannibalizing that pay-per-view model, which they had essentially built.
And after some early turbulence, it's working. Roughly 1.5 million people are paying $9.99 a month for the WWE app, making it the 5th most popular streaming OTT service. This adapt-or-die approach is in the WWE's DNA. Over the past 30 years, the company always seems to think 2 steps ahead. In the early 90s,
WWE was at its most threatened when Ted Turner took them on with WCW,
which stands for World Championship Wrestling. And back then, the WCW was winning the ratings war. So in order to compete with them,
WWE had changed its product from a family-friendly kind of cartoonish style to this really raw. That's why they called their show Raw. It was this raw style of wrestling.
With violent, outrageous, reality-inspired plot lines and aggressive personas.
From a 16-foot ladder!
And they won that fight against Ted Turner. And they bought WCW.
The early 2000s ushered in an era of testosterone-driven programming aimed at the red-blooded American male.
Bra and panties matches, and people smash each other over their head with like barbed wire bats and things like that.
Until 2015, when WWE fans started a hashtag Give Divas a Chance. Since then, WWE has hired 40 more female wrestlers, and that growing cast of female characters was part of a much larger plan.
They started to try to appeal to a broader set of people.
Let's attract more female fans. And after we've attracted more female fans, let's attract more international fans. They're broadening their base, and they're doing that in large part to make it more advertising friendly.
And not just friendly to advertisers.
They're trying to build up their fan base in China. They're trying to build up their fan base in Europe. They, already have a pretty good fan base in India.
India is a place where they already have an established wrestling culture.
Because of the gigantic Indian wrestler, the Great Khali. But there's still a lot of work to do. While the WWE set a revenue record in 2017, only 30% of it is coming from an overseas audience. And there's one person whose responsibility is to grow that number.
The buck eventually stops at Vince McMahon, no matter what's happening within WWE.
Yeah, he's a very controlling guy, and it's a very, very, very tightly scripted company.
And that goes all the way down the board to the big stars' entrance music. And their outfits and things like that.
So with a CEO like McMahon always planning 2 moves ahead and an aggressive push into multiple international markets, a big issue is money.
It's hard to do all those things simultaneously without committing a huge amount of capital to it.
And that's where the WWE becomes an attractive company for buyers.
Potentially, one thing that could happen with WWE is they could benefit by being acquired by a bigger technology or telecom company, an Amazon or Facebook Paramount or a 21st Century Fox.
So with a market cap of $2.8 billion, the advantage of owning 100% of their own content, and a rapid consolidation spreading throughout the entertainment industry, it looks like the WWE is well positioned, even if there are swerves ahead.
Our world is changing. Every day, it changes a little faster. Some changes are too small to see. Others, too big to handle. Sometimes, change feels slow. So slow, we don't even notice. Other times, it happens all at once, and we can't keep up. For our climate, change means many things. And between too small to see and too big to handle, there is a whole world of difference. The clock is ticking. This is Bloomberg Green.
Saving the seas. This week, the deep-sea diver who stopped writing the ocean's obituary to find a solution. Enric Sala tells us why the next 10 years matter most. And globalization needs to get greener. Shipping accounts for nearly an eighth of all transport emissions. How can the industry clean up its act? Plus, protecting coastlines comes at a huge environmental cost. But one Israeli startup found a way to keep the sea out and the animals in. From London, I'm Anne-Marie Hordern, and this is Bloomberg Green. After more than a decade of studying the ocean as an academic, Enric Sala realized he was writing the ocean's obituary. He quit his job and became a full-time conservationist. As an in-house explorer for National Geographic, he's clocked more than 5,000 open water dives. He's also founded Pristine Seas, a project that combines exploration, research, and media to lobby countries to protect their oceans. To date, it has helped create marine reserves equivalent to half the size of Canada. I spoke to him about his mission and why it's so urgent.
The state of the world's oceans is really bad. We have lost 90% of the large fish in the ocean. Sharks, groupers, cod, tuna. More than half of the fish stocks are overfished, which means that we are taking them out of the water faster than they can reproduce. More than half of the ocean is affected by industrial fishing, and global warming is killing coral reefs all around the world. The ocean is in a trajectory of decline.
Can you just visualize for our viewers who never get to see the kind of things you are able to see, what an ocean and healthy ecosystem looks like versus one that's next to a bustling economic and industrialized area?
Coral reefs in the United States, in the Florida Keys, are down to only 2% of what they used to be. Before, 80 to 90% of the bottom on a coral reef in the Caribbean was covered by live coral. Now, Florida Keys have only 2%. The average in the Caribbean is about 5% of the bottom covered by live coral. The rest is covered by slime and seaweed. And most of the fish you can see are this big. And it is very, very rare that if you jump into any place in the Caribbean at random, you see a shark. It's very, very rare. Now, let's go to Millennium Atoll, for example. An atoll that is uninhabited and fished south of the equator in the Central Pacific, belongs to the Republic of Kiribati. 2009, we conducted the first underwater expedition to this island, and I still remember the first time. Jumped over the side of the boat, and as soon as the bubbles cleared, I was surrounded by 15 gray reef sharks after a couple from going to these pristine places.
And you write in your book that you're writing the obituary of ocean life. What's the cure?
The cure is doing less harm. Basically, there are three things that we are doing to the ocean. One is we are taking fish out of the water faster than they can reproduce. Two, we are turning the ocean warmer and more acidic because of man-made climate change. And three, we are throwing in everything that we don't want, our waste and our plastic. We need basically to reverse these trends.
Does this mean that a lot of this falls to governments and their policies?
That's a big part of it, because it is governments that regulate fishing and mineral extraction and oil extraction. It is governments that have the legal authority to create large marine reserves in the ocean. But also, local communities have an important role to play, because some of the most successful protected areas in the ocean are community-led and community-managed marine reserves. So when the fish come back, the divers come in. And that creates huge economic opportunities through ecotourism. These areas that are managed by communities are very successful because the communities have a vested interest in having as many fish as possible inside them so they can enjoy the benefits.
What from the pandemic has changed your view when it comes to protection of the environment?
Nature has given us a very strong signal of how fast it can recover if we just give it space. Everybody was fascinated by all these videos of the whales and the dolphins coming into marinas and mountain lions on the streets of Santiago in Chile, wild goats in the UK. Nature has this extraordinary ability to bounce back if we just give it space. This is why we need to protect at least 30% of the planet by 2030.
How do healthy marine ecosystems help in the fight against climate change, though?
Most people see the ocean as a victim of climate change, but the ocean can also be a solution because we know that the more life that is in the ocean, like big fish and big whales, the more these organisms help to make the ocean productive and absorb more CO2. The kelp forest, seagrass beds, all of these are important ecosystems in the ocean that are similar to the forest on the land that capture a lot of our carbon pollutions.
What are you most excited about in your field?
We have 10 years to fix this problem. Global fisheries catch is going down, stocks are collapsing. Business as usual means that by 2050, 90% of the coral reefs are gone, that most commercial fisheries have collapsed. That affects food security, that affects migration of people. We have 10 years to get to peak greenhouse gas emissions and then go carbon neutral by 2050. And we have 10 years to protect at least 30% of the ocean so we can restore much of this health and productivity, not just for saving biodiversity, but also saving our life support system. We are not talking about something that is apart from us. We are not apart from nature. We are a part of nature. So these 10 years are probably the most critical in the history of humanity.
The most accurate measurements of changing oceans will come from space. While Enric Sala explores what lies beneath, a new satellite is giving us data from above.
We'll learn more about our oceans and climate change, but from space. A new satellite's been launched from California. Its mission: track the accelerating rise of sea levels.
Well, the main instruments on board include a dual-frequency radar altimeter. This is the primary instrument of the mission, and that's the one that's measuring sea surface height, significant wave height, and wind speed over the ocean. And from those measurements, we can actually have the superb measurements that we expect of sea level rise.
Data gathered from Sentinel-6 will be used alongside information from other satellites to build as complete a picture of the oceans as possible.
With a long record, we can precisely measure the acceleration. We eventually can detect new regime, tipping points. For example, if there is a runaway in the melting of Greenland or Antarctica, sea level will record this runaway change because it is an integrator of all changes that are occurring in the climate system. So we will be able to see some change, big change in the global climate.
The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration expects that sea level rise will increasingly threaten U.S. coastlines. One example, the southern tip of Manhattan is expected to flood 20 to 40 times a year by 2030.
11 of the 15 largest megacities are located at the coast, and this number will double. The number of people living in coastal area will double by 2060. So, knowing how much sea level is rising at the coast and how much it will rise in the future in coastal areas is as obvious. It's obviously a major goal for human beings.
Coming up, from sails to steam to oil, the shipping industry is no stranger to change. But how will it navigate the next transition? This is Bloomberg Green. From Bloomberg's European headquarters in London, I'm Anne-Marie Hordern. This is Bloomberg Green. Now, for your roundup of this week's latest climate news, Jennifer Zabazaja has your Green in Brief.
Here's the climate news you need to know. Deforestation of the world's largest rainforest has hit a 12-year high. More than 4,000 square miles of the Amazon rainforest was destroyed in 2020. That's a 9.5% increase from a year earlier. Government data shows that destruction has soared since President Jair Bolsonaro took office and weakened environmental enforcement. The Amazon is home to millions of species and plants and is critical in the fight against climate change. Bitcoin is hitting all-time highs, but at what cost to the environment? The cryptocurrency is energy intensive, and there are concerns if it becomes mainstream. According to MIT, back in 2018, Bitcoin's carbon footprint was almost as big as Portugal's. Want to get better at tackling climate change? We'll hire more women. That's according to Bloomberg New Energy Finance. Firms with 30% or more women in top jobs tend to perform better when it comes to the environment and are more likely to set clear climate goals. Shopping online is more popular than ever now, but the price of convenience is measured in CO2, and more deliveries means more fuel burned and more packaging wasted. So what can companies do? Well, many are becoming more efficient and sourcing more clean energy for their data centers and warehouses. And England's farmers will be paid to go green after Brexit. As European subsidies are phased out, they'll get new money to encourage them to produce healthy, sustainable food. Poor farming practices are one of the leading drivers of water pollution and the loss of biodiversity. I'm Jennifer Zabazaja in New York. Anne-Marie, back to you.
The shipping industry is more than just the grease on the wheels of globalization. It's its chief enabler. 11 billion tons of goods are transported by ship each year, the biggest contributors being 2 billion tons of oil, 1 billion tons of iron ore, and 350 million tons of grain. According to the International Chamber of Shipping, 80% of Europe's imports and exports happen over the seas. And for such a vast industry, it also contributes its fair share of emissions. Shipping makes up 12% of global transport energy consumption. So how does it clean up its act? Earlier, I caught up with Bloomberg Green reporter Laura Milan about just how big of a challenge this is going to be for the industry.
One of the main issues is size. So about 90% of the world's cargo is moved by ships. So obviously changing such a huge industry is not going to be fast and it's not going to be easy. The second issue has to do with technology. So ships obviously travel for many days at sea. It's not as easy for them to refuel as it would be for a car, for example, going on a road. And the sector still hasn't found a technology that's economically viable and that's zero emissions and equivalent to the electric batteries for cars, for example.
But actions are being put in place to make the industry a bit more environmentally friendly. Walk us through those steps that they're taking.
That's it. So there's a first step that would involve using low emission fuels or biofuels that would significantly reduce the existing emissions. And then at regulatory level, when it comes to the policy and the governments, there are steps being made as well. I would say that the most significant ones come from the European Union, which started to track emissions a few years ago and is now looking to include shipping emissions in the emissions trading system. So that would significantly reduce and help calculate the emissions from the shipping industry. Now, China is taking similar steps. So at the moment, regions need to report shipping emissions to the central government. And finally, we have the International Maritime Organization with a pledge to reduce shipping emissions by 50% in 2050. Now, we must say that that pledge has been considered insufficient by environmental groups, but at least some steps are being taken.
So to get to 2050, the industry obviously is going to need to start tapping some new technologies. What new technologies are you seeing being introduced into the shipping industry?
So we have seen pilot technologies being developed for years now, but what's interesting about this current moment is that we're seeing big players invest in these technologies that are not yet economically viable, but that one day might be. So for example, we are seeing earlier this year, the world's largest agricultural commodities trader, Cargill, saying they will invest in attaching sails to their ships so they can make any technology that they run their ships on more efficient. Similarly, we have seen a spin-off of Airbus, the aeronautics company, developing a similar application with kites. We have been following also developments in hydrogen. So at the moment, hydrogen fuel seems like a good option, a possible option when it has been developed and when it becomes economically viable. And we have Vestas, for example, the world's largest turbine maker, developing some ships that will be able to run on hydrogen in the near future.
Coming up, rising sea levels means humans need to get creative when it comes to coastal defenses. But how do we protect both ourselves and the environment? One Israeli startup may have the answer. That's coming up next. This is Bloomberg Green. In London, I'm Anne-Marie Hordern. This is Bloomberg Green. After water, what's the resource that humans use the most? It's concrete, 3 tons a year for every person on the planet. And engineers estimate it's used twice as much as all other building materials combined. And it comes with a huge environmental cost. Concrete, not just in cities, it's a common feature on our coastlines too. And that's taking a toll on biodiversity. But one Israeli startup has found a way of making sea defenses stronger and encouraging life to thrive.
If you take a look at concrete structures like breakwaters or seawalls, the water around them is often clear. That's not actually a good thing, because it means there's no life. Marine species are actually most abundant in coastal areas, but it's also where us humans prefer to live too. So when we build here, we drive away marine life.
The concrete in the marine world has a lot of additives, a lot of chemicals, and some of those materials are actually leaching out, and they're actually prohibiting marine life to thrive. If we keep developing without any regards to natural communities, there is a tilting point from which beyond we cannot really go back.
In the coastal city of Tel Aviv, an Israeli startup wants to revolutionize our urban coastlines. Their sea defenses are transforming lifeless man-made structures into teeming ecosystems. They do this by replacing standard concrete with their own special cement formulas.
As opposed to regular cement-based concrete, e-concrete includes certain elements that enhance the growth of marine flora and fauna of plants and animals. Our admix, which is kind of our secret sauce, is basically kind of sealing the concrete, making it less aggressive for the marine environment. That once we add it, we enable life to flourish.
In the lab, the team run tests to identify what mixes will work best for marine life.
So we take really ice cube-sized concrete slabs of different compositions, and we put larvae, 20, 30, 50. We need to have a lot of replicates. We're geeky scientists, so we have to have a lot of replication and controls. And then within a few days or just a few weeks, we can get an answer on their preference. So obviously, if they die, they have a very low tolerance to that specific concrete mix design. And if they thrive or they flourish, we can quantify that very quickly.
E-Concrete says it typically sees double the biodiversity of regular grey concrete. From fish and sea caterpillars on their armour blocks to crabs on these tidal pools that sit on the shoreline.
This unit holds water during the low tide, so it's always moist, and therefore it has a very comfortable habitat for crabs and sea anemones and sea stars, etc. These pools have been here for less than 3 months, and this is already what you can see. It's covered with life. See the rock around it, which has been here for probably 10, 20, maybe even more years, only has a thin layer of green algae, and that's it.
As well as the composition of the cement mix, E-Concrete designs its products specifically to the marine environment it will be deployed, to create niches for endangered species, or to develop nurseries like these oyster beds. The final part of the equation is creating complex surface textures to mimic natural rock or coral, an environment that helps anchor young organisms.
When concrete elements are being cast, the typical goal is to have a very slick surface, very, very smooth. The idea is to get the water to flow right across it. When we're designing E-Concrete with a rough surface, we want to do the complete opposite. We want to slow the water when they are crossing the structure so that the larvae can actually adhere and attach to the surface.
E-Concrete has to offer its clients more than just ecological credentials. Over time, they've discovered that creating hospitable habitats for marine life adds another advantage, one that is surely hard to ignore.
We've seen evidence to the fact that the growth of the organisms on the concrete create kind of a layer of defense. Just the addition of weight, we can actually gain stability and strength over time.
This is let's say the unit when we put it in the water. And this is after a year in the water. And what you can see here is all the oysters are completely covering it. We designed the units so they can withstand the forces and perform in terms of structural performance, but they can also be a backbone for ecological enhancement.
The company tests its miniature designs in tanks full of real seawater, rocks, plants, and animal life from around the world.
What we're looking for is the accumulation of calcium carbonate on the surface of the concrete of different mixes and different designs. This is the process that we call biogenic buildup. So with time, we get a buildup of calcium carbonate that is sourced from marine organisms on the surface of the concrete. And we actually encapsulate the concrete with a natural rock. So when the organism die, in case of a coral, it will die, and then another coral will sit on it, and that's how a reef is growing.
The hope that our man-made structures could become stronger over time also means better economics. The units require less maintenance and could therefore stay in the water for longer. E-Concrete, though, is just a few years old, so it needs more time to really quantify the longevity of its products. But the company are certain their products are better for the environment, and not just in terms of improving biodiversity.
We're kind of trying to offset some of that immense carbon footprint of the concrete industry.
Construction is responsible for about 11% of global carbon emissions. By adding a biological crust to their products, E-Concrete prevents some CO2 from being released into the atmosphere.
For every kilogram of calcium carbonate being created by those marine organisms, we're offsetting 120 grams of CO2. So think about building a port infrastructure or a city waterfront that is an active carbon sink. I think that's a great advantage of the technology.
That does it for this week, but let's keep the conversation going on Twitter. Follow us at Climate. I'm Anne-Marie Hordern, and this is Bloomberg Green.
This is Bloomberg Business Week. Insight from the reporters and editors who bring you America's most trusted business magazine, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Bloomberg Quick Takes Tim Stenovic on Bloomberg Radio.
Yes, indeed. Live from our Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio, streaming on YouTube. It is Wednesday, Hump Day, May 26, 2021. Stocks up, Bitcoin is up. We woke up to the official news that Amazon is buying MGM, and bank CEOs, come on, everybody, get woke.
Yeah, facing a fierce line of questioning, particularly, yeah.
Yeah, well, it was
from
actually
Senator Warren.
fairly a good back and forth. But yeah, Senator Warren, when it comes to the financials and the big banks, she doesn't hold back. We're going to talk about that. We're also kind of burying the lead today. A most read story in the Bloomberg by our own Scott DeVoe, who caught up with Carl Icahn, legendary shareholder activist. We're going to hear from Mr. Icahn shortly.
Yeah, he's going to be joining us at just about 10 minutes from now. So stay tuned for that. In the meantime, let's get a check on the trading day with Charlie Pellet. Hey, Charlie.
We're higher, barely, at least for the Dow right now, up by 2 points. Little changed on this Wednesday here. S&P up 5, up 0.1%. NASDAQ up 65, higher by 0.5%. Russell 2000, though, the big story, small caps outperforming the Russell 2000, up now by 1.65%. Bottom line here, stocks higher, led by companies tied to a broader economic reopening amid easing concern that the Fed will boost rates sooner than expected. 10-year yield 1.57%. Gold is down 0.3%. 18.93 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.3 now, 66.25 a barrel. Senate Banking Committee Chairman Sherrod Brown ripped Wall Street at a high-profile hearing today. You heard it live here on Bloomberg Radio, featuring the top executives at the 6 largest American banks, saying, quote, "It's past time for the industry to step up and help struggling workers." All the banks, they're advancing now. JP Morgan Chase, for example, up 0.3%. Citigroup up 0.3%. Wells Fargo up 0.8%. Bank of America higher by 0.3%. Morgan Stanley shares up right now by 0.7. Goldman Sachs up by 0.9%. One of the biggest names on Wall Street steering clear of Bitcoin. We're talking about Carl Icahn, at least for now. Icahn says he is studying cryptocurrencies but hasn't bought any. Right now we have got Bitcoin up by 3.3%. We will speak with Carl Icahn coming up shortly right here on Bloomberg Radio and Television. I'm Charlie Pellet. This is Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie Pellet. Bloomberg Business Week is brought to you by Commonwealth, supporting more than 2,000 independent financial advisors with the solutions they need to grow a thriving business. Commonwealth, go where you grow. Visit commonwealth.com to learn more.
All right, it is time for the Market Drivers Report. And let's set the Business Week agenda. Dave Wilson in the house in our Interactive Brokers studio house, stocks editor at Bloomberg News. Dave Wilson, we're up, kind of.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, not all that much direction. You go through the 11 main industry groups in the S&P 500, you see 7 of them are higher. It's that sort of catch-all consumer discretionary category leading the way.
It's apparel retailers in a big way. Abercrombie and Fitch and some of the Urban Outfitters.
Right. Not that they're in the S&P 500 necessarily, but they are having a heck of a day, no question. So is Dick's Sporting Goods while you're at it. That stock really taking off after results as well. I mean, heck, even the meme stocks. GameStop's up 15%. AMC Entertainment and Express higher by even bigger margins at this point. In terms of what's down, I mean, one stock that jumps out is Walgreens Boots.
Yeah.
And, well, it's a stock in the Dow Industrials. And here we are. It's the 125th anniversary of the Dow. And Walgreens is doing the average no favors. But it's the Amazon effect coming back again. I know you're talking about Amazon in the context of buying Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, but you also had this report out of the business news site Insider that Amazon is looking at setting up actual pharmacies, like brick and mortar locations. And so that becomes an issue for the biggest drugstore owners, Walgreens, as well as CVS Health. So you're seeing those stocks take a bit of a hit here.
Well, listen, it's a huge industry, right? I mean, if you think about drugstores specifically.
It's not that surprising that Amazon would be doing this. The company acquired PillPack years ago, so they have the subscription business, and Amazon wants to get into everything, Dave.
Sure they do. And they have Whole Foods, which could be a jumping off point in terms of that business. So
go get your quinoa and your prescription.
Whatever works.
But it's interesting because you could also then you set up, Amazon is really keen, like some other online retailers, where you kind of set it and forget it, right? And every month you get your things, and that kind of just falls right into them. So whether it's really going to a physical store or being able then to ultimately set it up online, like we see with some of the pharmacy benefit managers, that kind of seems like a no-brainer for them, Dave.
Yeah, it does, and it's really just a matter of time. I mean, Insider was quoting one person as saying that, it may take a year or more before they really kind of get going in terms of actually setting up locations. So, and this is a process. I mean, we saw it with the online pharmacy business, as you mentioned. They bought PillPack in 2018 and then didn't come out with their own online pharmacy until last November. So, they can be very deliberate when they want to be in terms of moving into new industries.
Hey, Dave, the big bank stocks not moving significantly lower on the Wall Street CEOs testifying in the U.S. Senate today. The KBW Bank Index higher by about 0.8%. What do you make of it?
Well, I mean, it's one thing to have to go before Congress and do whatever mea culpas you feel you need to do or defend your industry or whatever, and it's another thing for action to come out of it. So, I mean, you basically got, when you look across those 24 stocks in the KBW Bank Index and you see they're all up, it's kind of a vote of confidence that, perhaps there may be more times like this where the CEOs get called on the carpet. But, in terms of action against the industry, what are you going to get? That becomes the issue.
Right, exactly. But if you look at some of the names, JP Morgan at its highs was up about 1.2%. It's now just up about 0.3%. I mean, they've all come off of their highs. But you're right, Dave, this is not a new conversation. So what substantially changes? We're going to talk with Noah Buhire, a story in the magazine. I believe it's the remarks of the magazine this week about housing policy. And, many would argue that what holds a lot of individuals from owning a home, especially within the minority community, Tim, is that they just don't have access to the banks that everybody else has, or a lot of other people, white people in particular, have.
Yeah, and a point that Noah makes in the piece, and we'll get into this more with him, is that it's been really good for people who have money because they've been able to refinance at lower rates and perhaps even buy second homes during this time. Very briefly, Dave, I want to talk a little bit just about inflation and why the conversation seems to have shifted a little bit around inflation. I mean, what changed? Because it doesn't seem like investors right now have it top of mind.
Well, it may just be that, we don't have a set of numbers that are out today or out this week to tell us, what the pace of price increases is. And, you still have the Federal Reserve arguing that things are going to be transitory. So, people can hang their hat on that if they want to. I will tell you, though, there are certain industries where wage inflation is a potential issue. And we'll get into those next hour with my chart of the day.
Ooh, I didn't even know that was coming.
Hey, listen, can I just ask you about Exxon, activist investor, a small activist investor, 0.02% of Exxon shares was owned, winning 2 board seats in a shareholder vote. Basically, they're pushing for climate change policies at the company. Our Alex Steele, our commodity guru on Bloomberg TV, really put it in perspective to saying that Exxon's got 12 board seats. So remember that this is, a small thing. But nonetheless, Exxon is a behemoth when it comes to the integrated oil companies, and I think it's interesting to see the momentum, especially when it comes to climate change policies.
And you have to look at the money managers that are behemoths and kind of getting behind what engine number one was pushing. BlackRock, think about that, and all the focus that they've had on climate change as an issue. So, it's not just some little activist outfit that's acting here. I mean, it's part of a bigger movement.
So what does it mean for other fossil fuel companies? Are they going to start to expect to see similar activity from activist investors?
It certainly makes sense that they would, or if they may have to preempt it by, putting together their own plans that perhaps would address the kind of concerns that investors like engine number one have.
Well, it's interesting. I think of my conversation recently with Kathy Wood, and we talked about Elon Musk and when it came to Bitcoin and being all in and then all of a sudden kind of backing off because of the impact, the amount of energy that is used and the impact on the climate. And she said, well, maybe one of the things that was going on, BlackRock is a big investor in Tesla, and they are putting a lot of pressure, right? They are certainly talking a lot about responsibility of companies when it comes to impact on the community at large, but also on the climate. And so you do wonder whether Tesla and Elon Musk was maybe taking notice, especially with BlackRock being, I think, their 3rd largest shareholder in the company.
Yeah, it's a good question. And I also wonder to what extent it means that other types of shareholder movements will start to gain momentum, considering that engine number one has such a small portion of shares of the company.
All right, Dave, thank you so much. Dave's going to be back a little bit later on with his chart of the day. Dave Wilson, our stocks editor at Bloomberg News. Let's talk a little bit about our show coming up, because we are going to hear from Carl Icahn, the original corporate raider, original shareholder activist. I think, wasn't it Wall Street? They all said that maybe Gordon Gekko was kind of based on a Carl Icahn-esque character or someone in real life like him. So we're going to hear from Carl Icahn. He is the subject of a great story by Scott DeVoe. It is on the Bloomberg, among our most read stories. I mean, this is someone who has seen so many market cycles, but was out there, go back to TWA decades ago, has really been out there. Herbalife, like I think about that.
Look, and
Herbalife.
Also making just some fascinating comments about Bitcoin. Not quite dipping their toes yet into crypto, but certainly researching it and studying it closely.
So we're going to hear from him. We also got confirmation, Amazon buying the MGM movie company, $8.45 billion. We're going to get into that. There's multiple sides to that story, what it means for Amazon as a company and its streaming services, but again, continuing to see deals within the content space.
Yeah, I mean, so for so long, the narrative about Prime Video has been about making it more important for Prime customers and making it more valuable to Prime customers. But the question I have is, like, this thing is a standalone business yet?
Yeah, exactly. Hired during the pandemic, then guess what? You're more likely to quit. We'll get the details by that. We're going to talk about creating an American housing policy, and we're going to finish up with the founders of Clean Simple Eats on making your diet sustainable and enjoyable. Let's do the bite of the day.
Let's do it. It's one number that tells us a lot. It's brought to you by GEP. GEP helps businesses transform supply chains with strategy, managed services, and AI-based cloud-native software. Learn more at GEP.com.
Today's number, 125. 125 years ago, the Dow Jones Industrial Average making its debut. The index of 12 smokestack companies closed that first trading day, May 26, 1896, at 40.94. 40.94. It included General Electric as well as long-forgotten names like American Cotton Oil and Distilling and Cattle Feeding. And, of course, we know the Dow, it's a very different number today. I remember when it went above 10,000. It's now at 34,323. So we've come a long way.
And GE no longer included in the Dow. Happy birthday, though.
Yeah, happy birthday, Dow Jones Industrial Average. Always kind of a good snapshot, sometimes lagging a little bit, but about what's going on in the American economy. Carl Icahn has seen a lot of cycles in our U.S. economy. He's been involved in a lot of the corporate raids over the last few decades. He is the subject of a story among the most read on the Bloomberg Terminal by Scott DeVoe. Our team over on Bloomberg TV, Caroline Hyde and Taylor Riggs, catching up with him. Let's listen in.
For a very special conversation across the world of inflation, but across the world of investment activism, is Carl Icahn, Icahn Capital CEO. Carl, what a day to have you in the time of activist investments when we see Exxon, Chevron, both being taken to task at their annual general meetings by, in this case, ESG campaigners. But the role of the investor right now, is activism back, and what do you make of these sorts of moments?
Yeah, well, as I said in my interview earlier, I don't think it's ever gone, but I don't think that many really true activists around. For that matter, there never were that many, but today probably less. I think that's possibly because, as I said, for activism, you really need permanent capital. Because when you really want to make a statement in a company and take a lot of stock in it, you might have to keep it for many years. I mean, you have to be very patient to be an activist, and you have to be a good negotiator. But you still need that permanent capital, which a lot of the hedge funds that were doing it or tried to do it don't have. And I think when you get a bad market, that permanent capital isn't there. Also, I think you have to have a very thick skin, and so there's not many people that really can do activism, and that's why it's so lucrative, I think.
So lucrative, there aren't many of them who do it in the way you do, as you say, but when you see these sorts of moments, in companies that, of course, you're a man exposed to energy companies in particular, taking big stakes, trying to turn around the overall, performance of the businesses in which you take stakes. But when you look at energy investments in particular, when you look at the role of ESG, environmental investments, the pushback on climate impact, is that something that makes you sit up and listen? Are you aware of that and thinking about the profitability of these businesses going forward if they're being forced to make these changes in terms of climate change?
Yeah, I think climate change is a very interesting area. I think that renewable fuels are here to stay and will increase in one form or another, simply because, the voters have spoken, and I think that was part of the campaign with Biden, that, you want clean air. I mean, everybody wants clean air. Nobody wants to walk and, and feel they're breathing in carbon. So this renewable fuel is really there. We have a couple of refineries, for instance. We own CBI, and they got a couple of refineries. We're already changing some of those refineries, transitioning some of the power of those refineries into dealing with renewable fuel rather than fossil fuel. And that is going to be the wave of the future. And I think it's going to be a very interesting area to invest in. The refineries, interestingly and anti-intuitively, are not really in a bad position because of this, because a refinery is the least costly way to build a renewable fuel plant. Renewable fuel plants cost hundreds, if not billions of dollars to do. But if you have a refinery and it's in good shape and you have capital in it, you have to have hydrogen to do this and whatever, so that you could do both. You could transition part of it. And so that's what we're doing, and I think other refineries will do it. Being that said, I was reading what the senators of Iowa want to do, and make it part of the infrastructure bill. And I think that's a great idea, by the way. I think it should be part of an infrastructure deal. The government has to be part of this because renewable fuel costs more than fossil fuel to refine and to make. So I think what they're doing there is a good idea, but don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. You should still keep small refineries are having problems, real small refineries that don't have capital. Luckily, we have capital at CBI, and so we're a middle-sized refinery, I guess.
Big picture, yeah. Do you think if companies like Exxon don't pivot to the way voters are going, you'll see more of these shareholder revolts?
Well, now you're going into another area with Exxon. I mean, I'd like to really focus on companies, and we're not involved with Exxon or Chevron. So, I've always believed that there are a lot of companies. I don't want to talk about specific ones that I'm not involved with, but I've always believed that a lot of the problems we have in this country are, while you have some very good managements, there are too many poor managements and too many poor boards. So if you get me going on that, we'll go for a long time. As a concept, but I don't want to talk about a specific company like.
Okay, talk to us about the future then of activism. Where you see taking board seats, is that sort of the type of activism like we see today? Is that generally where you think the industry of activism is going?
Well, I think it's always been there. I mean, the whole concept of activism to get on the boards, and we've done it, as you know, innumerable times, and a lot of times successfully, some not successfully, to go in there and make changes. A lot of these companies have sort of hidden jewels in them. I mean, and the board of management don't want to do anything about them, and so they're laid to waste. So that is activism, really, going in if you and find out you'll have assets that aren't producing enough, and you want them to do so and enhance value. So I mean, that's what it is.
Carl, it's important to add value right now when we have an economy running pretty hot. From your perspective, is the economy in the US running too hot? What do you make of this inflation debate that, I mean, if Taylor and I had to take a drink every time we heard transitory, we wouldn't be fit for purpose right now in this role. How much are you currently thinking inflation is transitory or not?
Yeah, look, I really think that we're pumping a lot of money into this economy, and obviously you're going to get inflation from it. You already have it. So you have to be able to deal with that inflation, and you have to be able to put on the brakes, I think. Otherwise, eventually, we're going to hit a wall, but I don't know if that time is here yet. I mean, there's a lot of money around, and, frankly, and one big position, that CMBX short that we have. And, you know, there's so much money around. And what happens is, I think, in a system like we have, you know, there's a saying, absolute power, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts completely. And what you have is, if you want to talk about where the country might go, you know, you have this huge wealth gap, for instance. And one of the reasons is that really with money management, with, you know, I fought the entrenched establishment all my life. And you have that now. You have it in money management to some extent. Not in every money management, but, you know, you're selling companies, you're selling stocks today on Wall Street. And a great example, really, is these shopping malls that we're short. I mean, money managers like Alliance, Bernstein, and Putnam, for instance. And I'm not telling you they're bad people, and I'm not telling you, you know, they're doing it nefariously, but it is a form of a corruption. Maybe it's not a legal corruption, but it is when you go in and you're selling Mr. Jones over there, who wants to put his life savings in something, and you say, well, you know, this is CMBX that you shorted here, that you're selling insurance on, that's like treasuries. You know, you equate it to treasuries. The guy puts the money in and looks at what's happening in the malls today. It's eerily similar to 08. So you are having this problem, and this problem could exacerbate, where you really are sort of fooling the public in a lot of these. If you look at a lot of these investments today, now I'm not saying they're all bad. I don't own cryptocurrency. I think there could be something to it, but a lot of these investments today, like that shorting in the CMBX that those that credible money managements tell you to do, is really is very bad, because it produces a wealth gap, and when the market crashes again, well, I'm not going to say it's going to crash, but when the market gets hit here, and it will one day, this is going to exacerbate the wealth gap. I mean, so. I think I think we're getting to certain excesses here.
But then we talk about excesses as a way that potentially we're seeing the democratization of the stock market. I'm looking at AMC running higher today. I'm looking at GameStop. That was meant to be in some way retail, giving it to the hedge funds, the way in which Wall Street is currently run. What do you make of the so-called excesses that you see there? Is that actually democratization at work when it comes to the stock market?
Well, yeah. I mean, these companies, on a value basis, a lot of these companies are ridiculously priced, just ridiculously priced, and so eventually, you just can't have this without excess inflation, and so there's going to be a price to pay for it. Look, I don't think Reddit and Robinhood and all those guys are necessarily bad. I think they serve a purpose. Money is funneling back into companies. Some of these companies might be okay, but a number of them are really, the risk reward is absurd. I go back to my example because that's my favorite one, because that's where I know a lot about. I mean, is where you're getting people, or you got people to support for only 2% return, for instance. You got people to sell insurance on these malls. I mean, it's an absurdity, and that's being done not by people you might criticize like Reddit. That's being done by Alliance Bernstein. So it's really we are really moving into certain excesses right now. But yeah, the ones you mentioned. Yeah,
no, this is wonderful for our global radio and TV audience. We just want to reset the stage and let them know that we are indeed speaking with Carl Icahn, of course, Icahn Capital Chief Executive Officer. So, Mr. Icahn, you mentioned something earlier about excesses, and you hinted that cryptocurrencies might be in that space. Are they? You're looking at them, but not an investor yet. What would it take for you to be an investor in crypto?
Yeah, look, I think a natural manifestation of this inflation, it's not yet there, but you had it in the 70s, and what's going to happen if you have that is it's going to, a phenomenon of that is going to be for looking for other stores of value except outside the dollar, right? Because then just you know, we're a reserve currency now, but if you keep printing the money, It's not going to be there. Now, I'm not telling you that's going to happen for sure, and I'm not even telling you, I'm not telling you it will happen, but a currency like this cryptocurrency, well, you look at it and say, it really has no value. That's what the critics say, and I don't own any at this point.
So
But if you're looking for something where you might have another store of value, the criticism is a little bit, shall I say, wrong-headed when you say, well, what's the value of a cryptocurrency? Well, what's the value of the dollar? The only value of the dollar really is because you can use it to pay taxes. Because you say, I can't use cryptocurrency. What can I use it for? Why can you go out and buy a loaf of bread with a dollar? So it's the same thing. Now, the only thing you can do with the dollar, that's for sure, is pay your taxes.
Do you see it as a store of value, though, or a payment system? Or with Ethereum, it's the underlying blockchain technology. What is your use case?
Well, Ethereum is the underlying blockchain. So Ethereum has two things. You can use it as a payment system, or you can use it as a store of value. So you need Ethereum or the blockchain, right? If you're going to do the cryptocurrency to assure you that you have something, right? The blockchain, see, you never had that before where you can buy a cryptocurrency and you can say, I'm safe because you have the blockchain that makes it very safe for you. I'm oversimplifying it. It gets real complicated. But that is a good value. That's a great value. So Ethereum and Bitcoin are different. Bitcoin, I mean, to me, is just a store of value. Ethereum is really sort of a value-added company. Well, I wouldn't call it a company because it's a real complicated thing with all these the people that go and you know, make sure that the blockchain is working, I guess you could say.
Carl, are these the two that you're looking at? I know that you haven't bought into crypto yet, but when you're assessing the cryptocurrency space, are you looking at Bitcoin? Are you looking at Ethereum? Are they the two main areas?
Yeah, I'm looking at the whole business. I'm not looking at what to buy necessarily at this time. I'm just looking at the whole business and how I might get involved in it with Icon Enterprises in a relatively big way, because I do think it's here to stay in one form or another. I think
relatively big way. What does relatively big way mean, Carl?
Well, a big way for us would not be to buy a few coins or something, you know. You know, I'm not going to buy a few coins. I don't believe in trading the market if I can help it. You know, I've learned
hundreds of millions, billions. Is that what we're talking?
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I mean, a big way for us would be, you know, $1 billion, $1.5 billion, something like that. But that would be a sort of a big way, I guess, for us. But sometimes we go bigger than that. Sometimes a lot smaller. But so I'm not going to say exactly. But to get back to the, I guess you know way to really get back to the concept. But a lot of these other things, though, I think out there are overvalued. There's no question about that in my mind. But that doesn't mean that necessarily. And I was saying about cryptocurrency, to get back to it, I don't think there will be a lot of the survivors that are out there trading today in it. You know, I don't think so. I think there's got to be some form of really feeling there's safety and value there.
You know, you've been hinting on the drivers of excess. We started this conversation talking a lot about some of the big spending packages we've seen out of Congress. It's fueled into a lot of the rise of the meme stocks. Within this excess that you see, where are the biggest risks in the market?
Yeah, I think in the real estate market to some extent, in the commercial real estate, I mean, look, we overbuilt the commercial real estate before COVID, and we paid way too much for it. The cap rates were ridiculously low in it. And so I think there could be problems with that. Look, the one I really know the best is that CMBX thing. To go back to that one, I look at the malls, and I think that a lot of people are going to be surprised, have been surprised already. A lot of them lost 30%. I mean, that's a ridiculous investment because you only make 2% more than treasuries. That's your best as you could do, and you really can lose 40, 50% of your money. So I think there's excess there. There's excess in some of the companies you mentioned. I heard you mention a few of them, and I think well, you mentioned a couple. I think excessive. There are.
Can you, yeah, no, and these are great comments, Mr. Icahn. We're loving the conversation. We are getting some reports here that you're holding a roughly $400 million stake in Allstate. Can you talk to us about some of your holdings right now, if that's true, what you like, what you don't like?
Well, I can't talk about a number of the companies that we're involved with because we're on the board, so we can't really speak of them when the windows are closed. Sometimes I can talk about them, but not at this moment in most of them. It's true that we do own Allstate. I never said that publicly. We never put that out publicly. But Allstate was a good example of a company that was undervalued. Yeah, we bought it, I don't know, six months ago when it was around 90s. And I mean, but that's a good example where you could take a company. So we looked at that. I mean, I can say it. I guess it got out because we didn't publicize. But we looked at Allstate as just a value store because if you looked at Progressive, for instance, Progressive was 17 times EBITDA, as I remember. Allstate was 7. Allstate's a great company. Progressive's a great company, I guess. So we really studied Allstate and said, why the hell is it only 7? And it's because they should be doing certain things, what they already said they were doing. So actually, this one, it might have got around that we owned it. I don't know. But we never even had to talk to the company because the company lived up to what they were sort of saying they were going to do, which was to transition a lot of their model. Well, in other words, they would take down a lot of costs that were excessive, we thought, and to go more directly to the consumer. So we did nothing there. Hey, but we did pretty well in it. I'm proud to say. And it wasn't really my idea. It was one of the guys that came in, one of the bright young guys that we have working for us, and he came up with it. And he's a guy named Andrew Tenno, and he really did a hell of a lot of work on it. I got to say, I admired his work ethic on it, and we put a fair amount of money into it. I'm not saying how much. I'm not going to tell you how much, but hey, obviously when I tell you, we put in, when we do, we put in a fair amount of capital. So,
currently being reported that about 400 million was put in, so it got out, as you said.
I'm not going to, I just say that kind of investment is what we make because we don't do that many investments. We try to concentrate them. So,
Carl, for our global radio audience, for our global TV audience, I'm going to go back to an investment you made that perhaps didn't pay off in the way you hoped, Hertz. I'm thinking into the world of AMC and GameStop that we currently see, the run-up that retail investment had in Hertz and the exit that it's had from bankruptcy in terms of being bought out, a tussle for that asset instead, in fact. What did you learn through that process of having sold out basically at the bottom?
Yeah, look, you sure can't be right all the time, as I tell you. And I will say there, we knew that company pretty well, and it was a sad phenomenon because of the COVID. We were under a lot of pressure, and it's a tough business, very tough business, and I really congratulate the guys that held on to the debt and all. I'm not saying we didn't hold on to something there, but but certainly nothing like we could have. And I can only say that I got to tell you though, at that time, a lot of people didn't think that we could come out of this COVID as well as we can, so that people would be driving cars by the summer in demand. So. But look, it does help us in our other company that we own, which is the service side of Pep Boys, which, the business is booming in that. So, look, I'm glad it's coming back. So it hasn't really hurt us completely in that. But I sure missed the turn there as far as Hertz is concerned. And what the heck, you got to make mistakes in this business. I mean, there's nobody that doesn't. That's why I don't trade the market much, and that's why it's a difficult business. But but I congratulate those guys that held it. Yeah.
One other thing that's been going on a tear, and that perhaps you've not dabbled in, the world of SPACs. Is that something you ever eye up, Carl? Something that you look at in terms of?
I can't hear you. The world of what?
SPACs, special purpose acquisition companies, the world that perhaps Bill Ackman's just got into.
No, we're not. We're not in that at all. I mean, I guess. Hey, look, anybody can raise a SPAC, right? Because you're making an offer. I think the SPACs are a form of taking a company public. I will say this, even although a lot of my friends have started SPACs, and I've been pushed to do a SPAC. Carl Icahn does a SPAC. You can raise a lot of money for it very easily, because then you have to come up with something and get that money into it, and there's just a lot of capital there. But really, again, it's where are the customers' yachts? The guys that sponsor the SPAC, they're getting tremendous return. They get a lot for doing it, and so I'm not trying to be sanctimonious here, but I've learned that when you're taking all that big percentage, sometimes it comes back to bite you. So we never really got into that at all. So but the people who do, some of those SPACs are really good. So I don't want to tar them with one brush. I mean, some of the SPACs, some of these guys do a lot of work hard to come out with some good stuff in those SPACs, but a lot of them, you're paying too much for the underlying companies you're buying, and I think anyway. So we never invested in a SPAC, we never bought a SPAC, we never got involved in it.
We wanted.
But go back to. So I'm saying there's a difference. It's not like we don't go into any of these things. I mean, this cryptocurrency is really interesting. The SPACs, I think, are a phenomenon. Hey, look, they may change the model, and some of them are good. So I'm not going to knock it completely.
Right.
But,
we'd love to transition into just your broader thoughts on the economics, the housing market, your move to Florida. We heard from Jamie Dimon, of course, this morning, testifying in front of Congress, saying housing is a little bit of a bubble. They're not worried about it yet. I wonder what you see in Florida, if housing in Florida looks like it's in a little bit of a bubble or not.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, a lot of people are moving. In this interview I did with Bloomberg, a written interview that came out this morning, I said I love New York and always loved it, and it's really sad to see what happened to it. I don't know if it's a real move from urban centers. I mean, New York has been badly run, or is it a permanent move, or will urban centers ever get back to what they were? As I told you, I think a bubble for a while was real estate, because commercial. I'm talking commercial real estate. I think it was overbuilt. I mean, we overbuilt it before the COVID. I think the COVID was just the nail in the coffin. But are you asking me about housing, about residential? It's all where people move. I mean, everybody now. A lot of people say, "Well, why am I going to live in an urban city like New York? I'm paying huge taxes. It's a crime. There's a lot of crime in it. Not a well-run city, is excesses of, and so why stay there? I mean, that's the issue. But it's a shame, because New York was so vibrant. I grew up in New York. I love New York.
Is the moving out, do you see it due to taxes?
Not only taxes, it's just sad. I mean, look, I was happy to pay back to New York, where, I gave them money for the Icahn Medical Center at Mount Sinai, the Icahn Stadium. I really loved the place, and then it suddenly just turned bad, and I think it's partially, really, you have a mixture. When you have a mixture, it's a very, very toxic amalgam when you have the kind of government in New York we've had, and then you have all this other stuff hitting you all at once. But that's true of a lot of urban centers, a lot of cities, not all of them. Yeah. And does that mean it's going to last? Does that mean it's a secular change? I don't know. And then Florida obviously gets the benefit of a lot of movement down here. And will it last? I don't know. It's not like, I mean, the real estate in Florida has gone way up. Would you invest in residential in Florida? I mean, at this point, I mean, we own some real estate down here, sold it. But I'm not the right guy to ask, because I like to buy things, when they're very cheap in my mind. So I'm not the right guy to say, would you buy it at this level? I don't know.
You want to buy cheap, you want to then sell. And there's a question now, of course, when you lock in those sorts of gains, the taxes that come there as well, Carl. What do you make? You were talking earlier about inequality, wealth inequality, something that clearly you're thinking about. How are you thinking about the changes in taxes, potentially raising taxes on capital gains, raising taxes for corporates in general that maybe you own? What do you make of the landscape?
Well, I'm going to ask you a question. I mean, look, I always believed back in the days of Perot when they were going crazy about the deficit, and I think it was like $1 trillion, they were going nuts. So I said, oh, yeah, the country can afford to keep printing money, it can afford to go and have some deficit. But when you get to the point that you're now, you're sort of at a party, aren't you? I mean, I don't know how, so this infrastructure would be great. And I think it would be great to have clean air. But I just keep saying to myself, how do you pay for it without having taxes? I mean, you can't just keep. I just don't think you can issue money. I mean, hey, look, the Fed. You know the old saying, "Don't fight the Fed." They know what they're doing. And I just wonder though that you know the Fed keeps basically. I mean, it's the simplest way to say it, but just keeps issuing money. He keeps issuing currency. So you go back to our old discussion about cryptocurrency. So you say, hey, after a while, why is the dollar better than a Bitcoin? Or I'm not saying to buy Bitcoin, but why is that a better store of value? And the only thing you can really say a dollar does, I mean, look, the federal government doesn't stand behind the dollar. You can't go to the federal government and say, give me gold or something anymore. So I'll just ask you, how do you get, you just can't do it without, so you have to take some dollars out of the society that you keep printing in. Even in World War II, they printed money and you had a big deficit, but they had war bonds and they had all kinds of price controls. So how do you do it here? You know, you have people buying bonds in World War II. Here, in one way or another, you got to get that money back. So you're going to have to raise taxes. I mean, that's one way of doing it. And another way is stop spending. But if you stop spending, then what happens to the economy? That's the question. And then you could argue the economy is great and it's going to keep going anyway. And the numbers are great. So is it going to go up? And how long is it going to go up for? I don't think it's going to end right tomorrow. I don't think you should go out and sell your stocks tomorrow. I'm not saying that. I don't know. But sooner or later, that party's going to have to be over, I think.
The party's going to have to be over. For our radio and TV audiences right now, Carl, I'm looking at a headline that's just crossed. The Justice Department wants a casino mogul, Steve Wynn, to register as a foreign lobbyist. That's to do with Chinese authorities, his lobbying connection in 2017, we understand. But I'm interested in how we're currently seeing business and politics continue to weave hand in hand. You're a man who understands politics deeply. You're a man who back in 2016 was talking about the deficits, as you are now, talking about the Republican Party and the way in which it was looking at that deficit, and perhaps you thought at the time getting too worried about it. What is the future of the Republican Party right here, right now? You're a man, of course, who publicly supported President Trump, as then was. What about a Republican Party with or without Trump?
Yeah, look, I've always been, and I am sort of bipartisan. I've never been involved in politics. And this is not to say that I didn't support Trump's, Trump would, would talk about me on TV a bit and whatever. And I personally, at that time, did not want to see Hillary Clinton be president. I thought I didn't like a lot of the stuff that happened in Benghazi, was it? And I personally don't like. I'm not crazy about big government to begin with, but right now I'm sort of bipartisan. I think Trump did some very good things. Some things I disagreed with completely. So, and right now, I think Biden. I mean, by issuing all this capital, I mean, hey, I don't know if you had to do it, but it did help the economy. There's no question that it did stimulate the economy. And what the Fed did was stimulate the economy in a very, very bad time with the virus. So you can't say, you got to see where this goes. I mean, but you really can't have, there's a lot of things that are bad or good. So I'm not trying to equivocate, but frankly, I think this is something you got to watch very carefully and see where it goes. And I don't think anybody can predict, where it's going. I can look at companies and I can say this company is really cheap, and there's something and I really do say that a lot of the problems we got. I mean, it sort of relates to this. Is that a lot of our companies are not well run and they're not well managed. And by the way, a lot of money managers, these fund managers are I think, shall I say, not doing a great job, even though they might be making money in returns. So I would say that we should do something to. I really say maybe a lot of my friends will like it, but I think we should do what we can to control Wall Street to some extent. I think, and this excess buying, we should be doing something to control fund management to some extent. We should be doing more corporate governance. Now, if you did all that, a lot of these middle class people wouldn't be losing all the money they invest when this thing hits. So, it always goes in cycles, and I've seen all my life. It goes up and up and up, and the old saying is, "Where's the customer's yachts?" So the money managers, the guys on Wall Street, the investment bankers, they all make a lot of money, right? Everything's wonderful, boom, 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 and people are making money great, in the market like today. But then when it gets hit, who gets hit? It's the poorer guy. It's the guy that listens to the investment advisors. Investment advisors, they still got pretty good, they still got a pretty good business, and also the corporate guys. So and I'm not even talking to the smaller wealth management guys that believe that the fund knows what they do. And I'm looking at some of these big funds, big mutual funds. So you say, well, who's the ones that suffer? It's always the little guy. That's why then you wonder why you have a wealth gap. And you have the wealth gap because
is regulation
over
needed,
the years,
Carl? Or is it self-correcting by having people like yourself and your friends that you're talking to, as you say, look at Wall Street and, as you mentioned, control it from your perspective?
Well, it's not self-correcting at all unless you go in. I mean, guys like me can't correct it. It's you have to really have a big push on a governmental level. On the other hand, I want to be careful because I don't want to see too much government control. So you got to walk a very fine line. But some of the stuff that I see, some of these egregious things that are done, you mentioned a few of them. Some of these egregious investments, and I mentioned, so I mentioned the malls. You mentioned GameStop. These things, who pays for that? At the end, the small individual is going to pay. And then you say, why is there a wealth gap? And I think that's part of the answer to it. That some of these things are just go to excess, and that's where I think we're going now. We're going to excess in a lot of things. Being that said, hey, look, I'm just a guy that, I fought the establishment all my life because somehow it irritates me when I see it. But hey, I'm not going to be sanctimonious. I mean, I have a company that I run, and that's I could have gone to the White House more maybe. But I look at it that I run this company. I'm an old guy.
Yeah.
I've got, I'm very proud of the record I've had over the years, and that's what I do. So I could just tell you, these companies I think are undervalued, these are overvalued. Maybe this is something to be looking at, but I can't answer the big questions because I don't think anybody can. I think it's impossible. You write all these treatises on it, and you can't.
Well, you've been a great person to ask the big questions to, as the man who, according to the Bloomberg terminal, is worth some $22 billion, 79th in the wealth rankings on Bloomberg. You're the man who's been running your business and indeed can serve our audience, both radio, TV, and YouTube, very well by listening to what you say. Carl Icahn, it's been great to have some time with you. Yeah, what old guy? Carl Icahn Capital Chief Executive Officer. What a joy to have you with us. Stay well, and thank you. Come back to New York sometime and visit us. Meanwhile, Taylor, talking over...
All right, of course, that was Caroline Hyde over on Bloomberg.